we'd like to talk a little bit about Drupal and WordPress in the enterprise, especially for those of you who are starting to make decisions about using one of these. I mean, most of you, it seems, are already using one. But when you start talking about scaling up, there are questions about who needs to be involved in all of the various different decisions and what all the processes are to make sure that your business objectives are being met by how you actually serve the site.
So the first thing I'd say is, don't just look at the technology agnostically. Really look in your industry and look around and see, are people in my industry starting to move towards a particular technology? So in this case, in media and entertainment, we've got NBC Universal represented here. We have Fox represented here. Not on the panel, but in the room. John Keegan's here. And so in the media and entertainment, we're seeing a huge adoption of Drupal as sort of the internal platform of choice for the web. In the public sector, as I said, White House, throughout the high-tech sector, we're seeing more and more of the big brands moving towards Drupal. And in higher ed, we're seeing 1,000 sites getting rolled out at a lot of the big Ivy Leagues as well as other universities. Probably over 1,000 schools using Drupal throughout the United States, and huge adoption. And then also, we're starting to see stuff in healthcare, where a lot of healthcare organizations are starting to move to Drupal. So look at the leaders in your industry when you're picking a CMS. There's a lot of, we had some interesting debates or discussions earlier today, and we talked about some of the features and the capabilities of WordPress versus Drupal. But I think what's really important is when you're looking at it, don't just look at the features, don't just look at the software, don't just look at the people who are using it. Really look at the ecosystems behind them, because it's the complexity and the robustness and the integrity of those ecosystems, their ability to innovate and have really good companies behind them doing interesting stuff. And so Drupal has got a very rich ecosystem. A lot of companies that are start at 1 or 2 developers, but then work up to 20 or 30, and then we're seeing companies like IBM, Amazon, Capgemini, General Dynamics. Big, large systems integrators really adopt Drupal because of the kinds of solutions that their customers need. They really see Drupal as a really winning platform for them to use. So look for that diversity in the community that's backing the platform. And then I think the last thing to say is that we'd all like to live in a world where we had one website, but I think that's really in the past. We no longer have just a website. What we've seen as a trend is that people end up with lots of websites and lots of different kinds of websites. And so initially, maybe they started off with something as simple as having some sort of social media presence, having a blog, but then quickly, they also had to get a corporate site and get a site up 10 years ago, and then all of a sudden, they needed some product sites, and then they had a marketing event that they had 2 weeks notice on, and they had to get a little micro site up. And before they knew it, the team got familiar with a particular CMS, and next thing you know, they're building an intranet site. And then somebody says, hey, we want to have a marketing site, so let's go build a community site. So there's lots of people from the community. And then somebody says, hey, maybe we could get the smart users of our products to support each other. And so why don't we create a support community out there? And so what we're seeing is a lot of people, when they go to build a site, they're picking a CMS, but you really need to take a step back and say, am I picking a CMS for a single website, or am I really picking a CMS that's going to get used multi-purpose across a lot of different needs within my organization, and therefore I should have a platform that's really flexible. And then the last, and I think this is really important, is you really need to know who your stakeholders are. And if you're like me, you spend a lot of time going into boardrooms for enterprises and sitting around tables with less people than this, but maybe 13, 14 people, and I sit in this room with stakeholders and they're evaluating CMSs. And so the first, maybe somebody from the design team is representing the users, and they say, is Drupal, I see a lot of Drupal sites, they look boxy. We want something that's really elegant, that's really beautiful for when people come to the site. So can there be beautiful Drupal sites? And so we show them beautiful Drupal sites. And then there's the content editors, and this is where WordPress really shines. Really big focus on publishing and publishing to the web. And Drupal is kind of, in that way, sort of second tier, but it's really more of a CMS toolbox, right, for building your CMS. And so we see things like organizations trying to create customized user experiences, and Drupal's really powerful at creating customized user experiences for content editors. And so that's something you want to consider. For designers want to have beautiful designs, and they want complete control, and they don't want the CMS getting in their way. So you've got to make sure that Drupal can be overridden and moved out of the way when it needs to, so the designers get what they want. And then developers, they want flexibility. They've got a job to do. They've got a certain period of window of time. They've got to write custom code, and they want to override things and control it and move bits around really quickly, and so they want that flexibility. And then the operations team is basically really concerned about what I called as the ilities, which is really about security and maintainability and scalability and things like that. And so they're really worried about, how do I manage this over a course of time? And so they've got a stake in this because they're going to be the ones who get the pages in the middle of the night if the site goes south. And then the last is the IT executives, and that's folks like Marvin and Eric on both sides of me who are really thinking about how much is this going to cost me given my budget, how much risk is this going to introduce, can I go on vacation if I pick this platform, can I sleep at night? And then last is, I've got to report to a boss, I've got to report to a COO or CEO, and if they come in and change the business strategy, can I execute quickly, or do I have to scrap my platform because I've just suddenly discovered that I can't do what I need to do? So those are the kinds of things, and I think different platforms excel in different areas. If you're really focused on content editing and having a really great publishing experience, WordPress is excellent, and it's really great for building really big sites. If you're focused on some of the other things, I think Drupal is really strong. And so you have to look at the right mix for you and really figure out who the stakeholders are that are going to be making decisions in your organization.